Greetings, YouTube. I've had numerous requests to review this Hackmaster 5th edition. I had never purchased a leather-bound gaming book before. Hackmaster's Player's Handbook. So I thought, what the heck, people have asked for it. I had some recommendations for it from people. They thought it was rather good. So I thought I'd give it a read. So I did, and I've accumulated 3 pages of notes, something I have never done before. So this is going to be a fairly lengthy review, so I guess I should just get at it. The most important thing to know about this rendition of the Open Gaming License is that it is all built on build points. So your character's going to get build points, and it's going to be how you purchase your classes, all of your abilities, how it's going to let you develop your character the way you want to play it. So it's a point-based D20 system, and that's very important to remember. The first thing I noticed right off the bat is that back in first edition, 5 of the stats were just 3 to 18s. Okay, but one stat, strength. If you had an 18, you then rolled percentiles, and so you could have a number above 18. So you could have 1838 or the much coveted 1800, which gave you some significant bonuses. So Hackmaster 5th edition, I have no experience with any other versions of Hackmaster, so I make no references to them at all. Hackmaster 5th edition uses this mechanic for all of the stats. So every single stat will have a number between 3 to 18, and then a percentage after it. So 1156 or 1721. You get the point. And as you accumulate build points, you can buy up the percentage score until it finally tops out at 00, and bingo, you are now 1 point higher. You have gone from 1172 to 12 in that case. It's a nice mechanic. I don't think I've ever seen it before, and I think it can give the player a very visceral experience, knowing he's slowly ramping up those stats. I kind of like the way that works. Demi-humans get screwed on class choices. Now, because you have build points, which classes you can buy into are different costs if you're a demi-human. If you're a human, all classes cost the same to buy into. But say if you're a dwarf and you'd like to play a wizard, or a mage in this case they call them, I believe, their generic arcane class, it would cost you 75 build points. I hate that a lot. I hated that back in the first edition days. I thought it was horrible, telling people they couldn't play certain classes, or excluding them, or saying they had class level limits. I despised it. But Hackmaster 5th edition wanted to keep that rule around. Okay, I don't like it. Barbarians are implied that it's male only, and the passage covers barbarians is incredibly sexist, referencing skills of day-to-day life as women's work. Who wrote this? A 12-year-old? The Knight and the Paladin are essentially advanced classes of fighter. So you'd be a fighter for up to 5th level, then you would jump into Knight, you'd be a Knight until 10th level, and then you'd jump into Paladin. Or Paladin, depends on how you like to pronounce it. I say Paladin. And it's only available to humans. I hate that. Everyone can be a knight. Anyone can be the avatar of a lawful god, of a good god. You're telling me there aren't any half-orc paladins in the world? No elves? No dwarves? Who's more lawful than a dwarf? Alright, whatever. As far as the races are concerned, not all the races have stats that balance out to 0 like you do in the standard OGL, or in the case of Pathfinder, where it is a +2 overall stat. So your human, for example, gets a +2 to 1 stat and penalties to nothing, while other races have an accumulated end bonus of +2 overall. By the way, I will make numerous references to other versions of the OGL. Because this is all based on the D20, I can't really help it. But the half-orc ends up with an imbalance of a -7. Why don't you just say, don't play half-orcs? Is this the version of balance this game has? I don't like it. Half-elf and half-orc have 2 versions of each race, depending on which parent culture they grew up in. So if you're a half-elf that were raised with elves, or you're a half-elf that were raised with humans, you'll have different stats. Same for the half-orc. I like that. Quite clever. It's a nice mechanic. There's an assassin class. Why? Anyone that takes money to kill someone is an assassin. You don't need special skills for that. Now, rogues tend to make the best assassins because, let's face it, they're sneaky people. But anybody can be an assassin. Mages make awesome assassins. So do clerics. Monks make great assassins. But nope. Everybody in this game wants to go out and kill people professionally. You become an assassin, the official class. I guess adventurers don't count. The mage, which has a limited spell selection, which I like. I like the fact that it's not a huge... I have to freely admit that I have gotten to the point, even though I'm a fan of Pathfinder, the number of spells available is kind of daunting. Random spells, starting spells, I hate that. Now, if you were told on the first day of college that, I'm sorry, you don't get to pick your classes, we're just going to roll some dice, and those are the classes you have to take, would you go to college? No, you wouldn't. That's asinine. And telling someone who's studied for years, and the game tells you how long it takes each and every class to train in, so you know exactly how long it takes a person to become a wizard or a mage or a sorcerer, whatever you want to call them, that you get a random selection of spells? No. No bloody way. Then there's a bunch of half classes. So like, fighter mage, mage thief, things like that. There are no prestige classes, unless you count the knight and the paladin as prestige classes, I guess. I kind of think of them a little more along the lines of advanced classes. I am indifferent to how this mechanic, they wanted to avoid prestige classes. I'm kind of all for that. And it does harken back to the old school vibe, so I guess that's good. The cleric, there is one cleric pantheon, and the pantheon is at war with itself. So there are bad gods and good gods, and they're trying to tear each other asunder. I hate that. There shouldn't just be one pantheon. There should be numerous pantheons. And the gods in one pantheon, even if they're positive or negative, should be working as a pantheon together. And commoners would be giving out offerings to whichever god is the appropriate god at that moment. Now, they're not going to be donating money to the evil gods because they like them. They're paying off the evil gods. I know a real-life, flesh and blood, breathing human being who gave offerings to a bad god to protect his child. Why? He didn't like the bad god, the evil god, the god of death. He wanted to pay this guy off. Might have worked. His daughter's still alive. Then they have each and every cleric. It has its own spell list, and there's 14 gods, there's 14 different flavors of cleric in this game, which I seem to feel like a whole lot like it's a straitjacket. I didn't much like that. But there is a religious specific spell list, and I did like that. And they talked about flaws and things in this, and one of the pet peeves of mine is that addictions and compulsive behaviors are not the same thing. You cannot be addicted to gaming. You cannot be addicted to sex. Those are compulsive behaviors if you do them too much. But they are not addictions. Addictions are chemical addictions. You are addicted to a chemical. And calling a behavior an addiction insults anyone who actually has an addiction. Not to mention, you treat them completely differently. Don't tell me they're operationally the same. They aren't. What? Okay, one second. Oh yeah, there's a flaw in here called Clean Freak. And if you take it, the player, not the character, the player, the guy sitting at the table, has to rewrite his character sheet every single session so that it's perfect and pristine. That's nuts! Weapon speeds. I have fond memories of weapon speeds back in the first edition. And after having read these rules, I can see the attraction to weapon speeds. But I also have come to the conclusion that I think that they're just too bloody fiddly. And that the benefit you get for them is not worth the effort you have to go through to use them. So I'll say that those who like them, they're here. And those who don't like them, I don't know how easy it would be to remove them from 5th edition Hackmaster or not. But they're there. Weapon specialization, which is a harkening back to the basics D&D Cyclopedia. I like how they executed that. And they have the weapon proficiencies, which is by weapon. I don't like that so much. I prefer the simple martial categories because I think it's easier and simpler. All right, we have weapons specialization leveling guide. I thought that was the how they level this weapon specialization was quite well handled in this. Now, they did have weapons broken into skill levels. So, like, this bunch of weapons are considered low-skill weapons, and this class of weapons are considered higher-skill weapons, and then you got into the exotic stuff. So it's kind of simple, martial, exotic, but not quite. And they have glaive as a low-skill weapon. I'm sure that the practitioners of the Naginata, who have based their entire lives around perfecting that weapon, would like to have a word with you. And the only high-skill weapon, or actually I should say the only high-skill weapon in this is the longbow. I thought that was weird. Yes, longbows are hard to use, but I don't know if there should be the only high-skill weapon in the entire game. Proficiencies are back, as in skill proficiencies. Yeah, they're back. Okay, that's how you want to handle some of the parts of this the system. That's fine with me. Then we have different types of fighting styles. All right. I think the way they do it is kind of a proficiency tax. I don't know. I was kind of neutral on that, I guess. Then we have talents, which is natural gifts, which are kind of like feats, but not quite, I guess. They call them talents. We have the skill section, which is a D100 skill leveling. So you could have a score of 1 to 100, and as you go up in build points, say you go from you want to go from 25 and you want to raise it, you get enough build points that you buy a mastery die, you roll the mastery die, and that mastery die is then how many points that it's improved by. And as you get higher and higher, the mastery die gets smaller and smaller, kind of showing you how it is more and more difficult to fine-tune a skill at the highest levels. So you could be whittling away at your skill to get towards 100 for a really long time if you were unlucky with the dice. I don't know if I like that mechanic. It's an under mechanic. I prefer everything being up. Positive. The highest you can get. I prefer that. If you're going to use a die 20 mechanic, that's my preference. There is a 5-tier leveling of skills. I kind of like that. I think it breaks things down into a way that's easy to understand. You have an idea of what someone who's in the 2nd tier can do, or someone who's in the 4th tier can do. And every skill has a breakdown of what that means. I like the details on that. There are lots and lots of skills in this game. The granularity is incredible. I thought they went way too far. I preferred Pathfinder, how they rolled things in, or Radiance, how they rolled things in to a skill that has a bunch of little subcategories, but you just put points into the main skill, and then you can do all those little subcategories. I think Radiance handles it the best. They have a fire building skill. Really? A fire building skill? That's like a modern setting telling Americans that they have to have a car starting skill before they can drive. If you are alive in the world in the 20th or 21st century and an American, you know how to start a car. And if you're alive in the Middle Ages or the pseudo-Middle Ages, you know how to start a fire. You don't need a fire building skill. Now, if you have no equipment whatsoever, that's where the survival skill comes into account. But if you've got normal equipment to start a fire with, you don't need a fire making skill. There's a salesmanship skill. I put down here, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. There is a torture skill. That is morally reprehensible. That sickened me when I read it. No player character in any game I'm ever going to run is going to be torturing people. It should be done off-screen by the bad guys, and I don't need a skill in the skill list to do that. Armor is DR and plus the defense adjustment. So you get a bonus to being defense adjustment, and it soaks up armor. Buckler, they talk about bucklers, and they talk about bucklers strapping to the forearm. Wrong! Bucklers are held in the hand. They are not strapped to your forearms. They are not oversized arm guards. Weapons don't scale to size. So if you're a short person like a halfling, and you'd like to use a human dagger, you can. But guess what, folks? A human dagger is not scaled for a small person. It is not a sword for a halfling. It is unusable for a halfling. It becomes an incidental weapon. That's what it is. It becomes a weapon of last resort. It's like picking up a bar stool. That's about how efficient it's going to be for you. You need weapons scaled to the size of the person that's using them. Getting rid of that mechanic was a really bad idea. There are tons of polearms. And my note here, Gygax would be proud. They have in here that sling bullets weigh like less than an ounce. No, folks. Real world sling bullets weighed between 8 and 16 ounces. They were big and heavy to hurt people because they were slow. These are not bullets like coming out of a gun. You need a big heavy projectile if you're going to use it in a sling. Combat to hit roll versus defense roll. More rolling. I don't want more rolling. I want a static roll to hit against a target, and that's it. I want the minimum amount of rolling. I don't want the maximum amount of rolling. Okay, there's a comment here on page 216 on the top of the page, and I'm actually going to break this out and actually read. Where the heck are the pages? Okay, they're right there. Because I was flabbergasted when I read this, and I think it's worth my taking the time. Here we go. If you're an avid game player, chances are you're accustomed to choosing an action or actions on your turn, probably from a list of allowable actions or categories of actions. This method works great for outdated games and with boards in certain inferior, I hate to even credit them as the term role-playing games, that have been hemmed in players because they either prefer simple games or plainly lack the genius to play great games known to the greatest game known to man. Now, in another section in the book, he also makes another reference to inferior, nonsensical rule sets. He's referring to older versions of the D20 mechanic. You know, the game that this is based on, the flavor he's evoking, the entire genre of games he's emulating. The OGL that handed him the ability to write this book and make a profit, and he is taking that, and instead of saying thank you and running with it, he slaps them in the face by calling the earlier versions inferior, nonsensical rule sets? I was insulting 12-year-olds earlier when I asked if he was a 12-year-old. I don't even remember this guy's name, but I'm not happy with him. Missile weapons, load times, bad. You have varying missile weapon load times depending on which missile weapon you're using. We don't need more fiddly bits. Don't want that kind of granularity. I don't need it that fine, folks. Yes, I know, it's all in the name of realism. This is a really abstract game. Okay? Shields grant cover. I kind of like that, the fact that shields grant cover. I thought that was a nice mechanic. But however, it's ablative shields, needlessly complex. So as you use your shield, people beat your shield wears out. It's essentially saying, you get more than one kind of hit point to track. No thank you. Fighting styles, I like fighting styles. Good, sword and board, two-handed, two weapons, I like that. Call shops and knockouts are back. Meh. The way they handled it was okay. I don't know if I missed any of them. I don't think I did. Fatigue damage in standard combat rules. So as you fight, you get more and more tired until you can't fight properly. I hate that. It isn't heroic in the least. I don't want that rule. Mounted combat, the way they handle it, too fiddly. I would just say you get a bonus to hit, and maybe you get a bonus to damage, and you're done. Or just a bonus to hit a guy on the ground, and the guy on the ground has a negative to hit you. You're done. Threshold of pain. More fiddly bits. And I actually wrote that. Don't need thresholds of pain. More things to track. Unarmed attack rules in this have their own flowchart. And in all caps with an exclamation, I wrote, a flowchart! If your unarmed combat rules need a flowchart, it's time to scrap those unarmed combat rules and write new ones. Critical rolls in this game are rolled on a D10,000. I'm hoping this is a joke. Spells must be readied prior to casting them. Why are you screwing your casters like that? Why? Essentially, you're saying that if you want to cast a spell, it takes you X number of seconds to prepare the spell before you can cast it. I didn't like it when it was earlier with the missile weapons. I don't like it here. Silver-based currency. Yay! Somebody's smart. At different levels, you re-roll your hit points. Why? Random spells at new level advancement. I hated it. Inferior games comment again, smarmy asshat. And I actually wrote smarmy asshat. NPCs in the player's handbook? Okay. Healing is 1 hit point per day, which is not heroic. You need to track individual wounds for healing. Fiddly, and I don't like it. So if you have 4 different wounds, you have to track those 4 separate wounds for healing. That's not good. Again, the granularity is too fine. Too much realism. Opposed saving throws, which requires an extra roll. Don't want extra rolls. Clerical spell descriptions have no level listed for them. Didn't like that. Heavenly Luck spell. Metagame meta duration 30 minutes of table time. This spell affects how much time passes on the table, not in the game world. I don't want spells that are based on real world times. I don't like that. I want everything based on in-game times. Induce drunkenness. And there are different categories. One of which is called wasted. And again, whiskey tango foxtrot. A strong breeze spell. Ooh. Spell fatigue. Did I mention I hate this? Yeah, I hate this. Spell point enhancement built into each spell. I like that. That was ripped off from the Psionic rules. Excellent. Spell lists. The spells go through from 1st level to 20th level spells, so you have a spell that tracks the same as the level you are. I like that. The pixie fairies are in the back of the book. They seem to be fairly well balanced as far as a race is concerned. And the game does, in fact, have a thorough and nice index. So there you have it, folks. There's my review of Hackmaster 5th edition. It's really long. I apologize. And I do not recommend this product. I did not like this product. For all the people out there who do, more power to you. Go out, game, have fun. But I'm not one of them. I don't want anything to do with this. I'm glad I own a leather-bound book. I'm going to put it on my shelf. I'm going to look at it, think it's cool. I may take it out once in a while and say, ooh, look it, it's my leather-bound gaming book. I'm never going to use this. I don't think it's a good game. I don't like the author's style. I think he insults all the previous generations. And this is coming from a guy that despises 4th edition. Alright? Some of the rules in this make no sense. There's sexism. It's a mess. It's too complex. They took an elegant or relatively elegant system and made it less elegant. I don't like that. That's why I was a fan of when I read Radiance. They took a good system and I thought they made it better by simplifying things. So, go read Radiance. Go have fun. If you want something that's more complex than Radiance, go read Pathfinder. Stay the heck away from 5th edition Hackmaster.